Good morning, Rabotai. Welcome to Breakfast in the Class. Breakfast in the Class today is sponsored by Desiree and Elad Dror in celebration of the birth of their son, Mabruk and Mazal Tov. As well, the week of Kol Bru is dedicated in loving memory of Sami Sayed, Alav Shalom Lilu Nishmat Shlomo ben Rivka, sponsored by his son, Isaac Sayed. You know, my friends, our parasha begins this journey into the journey of korbanot, of sacrifices. And the concept of sacrifices of korbanot in general is something which is esoteric, it's removed, it's something which we don't understand, we don't necessarily relate to, but at the same time, it makes up a huge portion of the Torah's obligations. So when we read about the holidays, we read about all the sacrifices that they brought. We read about the Chanukata Mizbeach. We read, 12 different Nisi'im. We read during the Chodesh of Nisan as well. So there's all these different, so much time and space in Torah is dedicated to sacrifices and to the korbanot, that it's important for us to understand that the korbanot themselves were obviously a big part of living life as a Jewish person. And although we don't have the Beit HaMikdash today, when we once again go back to the Beit HaMikdash, they will once again become a part of the service of God. Ramban writes something that I thought was very beautiful. He writes that when a person comes to do a korban, so we know there's a halakha that a person has to do v'samach yado al rosh ha'olah. If you put your hands on the head of the animal, and before the situation of the sacrifice begins, the person leans on the animal. He's supposed to even put some of his weight into this leaning on top of the animal. And the concept, Ramban explains as follows. He says that it doesn't really make sense that you should do a sin in isolation, and now this animal, goes to Shamayim, and because of that, now you get kapara. What's the connection between those two things? Why is that relevant? That this animal was brought as a sacrifice, and now, the Kohen eats a piece, or you eat a piece, or no one eats a piece, and all of a sudden you get kapara. So Ramban says that when a person leans on the animal, when a person sees this process unfold in front of him, he thinks to himself, or she thinks to herself, this really, because of the things that I've done, my mistakes, really this should be me. And the process that they see, that the animal itself goes to the Mizbeach and ascends, so to speak, in the process of bringing the Korban, that allows the person to reflect and think, if I owe my life to Borei Olam, and this is what I did with the life that he gave me, do I really deserve even the life that I've been given? Maybe Borei Olam, so to speak, should take back the life that he granted me if this is how I'm living it, with the mistakes that I'm committing, and the person in that thought process of teshuvah, as they lean on the animal, effectively the weight of the sin is transferred to this animal, because mentally he is doing so. And this gave me such an insight. This concept from Ramban gave me such a beautiful insight into what it is that we're doing here with this entire system called Judaism. I want to give you a mashal that I saw brought down, a beautiful mashal. Imagine this guy decides he's going to build a brand new house. He buys himself a lot and deal in Brooklyn. He calls a contractor and he tells the contractor, listen, I want a house, I want 7 rooms, beautiful, I want, what is this called? Viennese, what is it called? Venetian plaster, right? I want the very fancy item. I want all of the sinks, all of the faucets should be made of gold, and I want the door handles to be made out of platinum. And anyway, they come up with a price. What's the price for this magnificent house? 3 floors, 10 bedrooms, right? What's the price? They close on a price together with all of the all the beautiful finishings that a beautiful home palace could have, and they finish, and the price comes out to $3.7 million. Anyway, the guy goes to his friends. The guy goes to his friends. He says, "Look at what a good deal I got. I closed. I told the guy I want all the best finishings. I want this, and I want this, and I want this, and I want this. 3.7." They all say to him, "Impossible. A house like that, finished like that, costs much more. Impossible. No way." Make sure that the guy is not sketching you. Like don't let him bring you any a faucet from Home Depot. Don't let him get you the pipes from from Mabaref. Specify every item. The guy goes through and he writes a list, Excel sheet, every item, he writes it down exactly as he wants it, what it should be made out of, which material, where the guy should buy it from, full long list. He brings to the contractor looks down the list, he says, absolutely, no problem. Exactly, same price, right? Same price, you got it. My friends, after a month, the guy comes to the owner of the house, and he says, he holds the key. He says, Rohi, here's the key, payday. 3.7, you gotta pay me. The guy says, it took you 1 month to build the house? He says, come. They get in the car, they drive down to deal, they get to the lot, and there, sitting on the lot, are 12 gold faucets on the floor. 16, Venetian plaster walls lying on the floor. On top of the Venetian plaster, he's got 6 bathtubs with spa jets unhooked up to anything. A giant pile of materials there, and the keys that he's holding in his hand goes to a super special pladelet lock, which is lying also next to the door. The guy says to the contractor, he says, are you crazy? He says, look, you gave me a checklist. Let's go. Show me something that's not here. The guy says, Tipesh from the manishtana. I didn't hire someone to buy me this stuff. You're a contractor. I hired you to build it. I hired you to install it. Where's my house? I don't need a pile of goods on the floor. You out of your mind? My friends, you look at this contract, you think the guy has a couple screws loose. Literally, because they're on the floor. But the point here is that this fellow, this contractor that we all think is nuts, in many ways is all of us when it comes to Judaism. Borei Olam says, I'm sending you down to this world to build something beautiful, to create a masterpiece, to build a family, to create a set of values, to influence the people around you. And we come to Borei Olam after only 1 month, at the end of our lives, we're like, shuf, here's the checklist. I went to Shaharit 64,000 times in my life. Look at how many amens I answered. I got exactly the faucets that you wanted, and Borei Olam says it can't be. Really? Show me. They go back to the videotape and they see the lot, and all the goods are there, but you didn't build anything. A person could go through the motions of bringing a korban, but not actually come close to Borei Olam in any way. You know when you see this? When you see someone who you assume is a very religious person, and then you meet them in a business context, and the guy's a thief. Guy has he looks the part, but you see the way he speaks to other people, the lack of derech eretz. How could it be that someone is so religious and he doesn't have derech eretz? How could that be? You know what the answer is? It's not because he's a sketch and didn't go to Shaharit. He went to Shaharit. It's not because he didn't go to Minha, didn't go to Arbit, didn't learn the Daf Yomi. He did it all. But somewhere along the line, there was a disconnect between all the things that you do and all of the things that you're supposed to become. Now, this is not just a disease that affects people that look religious. It's a disease and a malady that affects not only all Jews, but the entire world. Sometimes you meet people, and it's just something actually I realized when I moved to New York. New Yorkers are rough around the edges, shall we say. Okay? You get in there, you're on the train, the guy's staring you down, and I realized after a little while, right? You don't make eye contact on the train with a stranger in New York City. Because the guy, what are you looking at? What are you doing? Huh? Right? The guy mugs you, okay? I realized when I lived in England, also you didn't make eye contact on the train. Right? But for a very different reason. In England, no one says anything to anybody. Everything is very polite. Everything is, very genteel. But then over here, the same guy that yells at you afterwards gives you directions. Isn't it interesting? It's an interesting thing. So I realized a lot of people in New York are rougher around the edges, and they're not so polite, but actually they might be quite helpful. And on my experience on the tube, they were very genteel, very polite, but maybe not necessarily so nice. How could you be? Ever met people like this? And again, this is not a castigation of people in England. There were a lot of very, very nice people in England. But the fact that being polite could sometimes be disconnected from being nice. And you have people who won't say thank you, please, good morning, good evening. how you doing, how are the parents. They don't have that, but they're willing to work so hard for you. These policemen, firefighters that you meet in New York City, there's no chit chat, but they're there for you. But then you have all these people that they're but and then when it comes to it, not my problem. Polite and nice are supposed to be connected. Otherwise, you have a sink faucet that's not connected to the plumbing, right? It's lying on the ground. My friends, this is true in so many different ways for so many different people. And I want to just share with you something magnificent about this concept of sacrifice. There was a great rabbi who lived, his name was, I'm blanking now on his name. When I remember it, I'll let you know, okay? I think his name was Reb Chaim Hirsch. I'll double check. Anyway, this Reb Chaim at the time, he was in one of the work camps in Russia. When they used to stick all these people in camps to re-educate them because they were practicing religion in a country that believed in communism and atheism. If they caught you, doing anything Jewish, they would send you to the freezing temperatures of Siberia, to knock that Judaism out of you, to get you so cold that you lost that Jewish warmth. Anyway, this one guy, he managed to sneak with him into the work camp that's meant to strip him of Judaism. He managed to sneak in a pair of tefillin. Okay? What does he do with the tefillin? They're very small tefillin. He keeps them on his person at all times, straps them to his leg underneath his clothing. Now, his job in the camp was to be a messenger boy from one camp to the next. Every time the guards needed to go, needed to say something, needed to get something, he was the guy that they would send. So all day long, 7 days a week, even Shabbat, any morning, any night, all they did, they sent them from place to place, on these missions. Had they used to bring his tefillin with him, even on Shabbat, because if they discovered his tefillin, if they found it, they'd track him down, and it would be the end of him. Okay? So it's pikuach nefesh. Anyway, one day, the guy is walking on his from camp to camp on a mission, and he sees that there's a guy hiding in the forest. He's swaying, and he's singing very beautifully the songs of Shabbat. It's a Breslov guy. His name is Nachman, obviously, right? He sees the guy, and he's singing so beautifully one of the Ashkenaz songs for Shabbat. Okay? I would sing it here, but no one would recognize it. Either way, the point is, so he's singing so beautifully. The guy walks into the forest. He says, this is Sonah Shabbat Shalom. Good Shabbos. The guy says, what are you talking about? He doesn't know who he is, doesn't know that he's Jewish. He says, what are you talking about? He goes, you were just singing. He says, yes, I was singing. He says, so good Shabbos. He says, I don't know what you're talking about.
I'm not Jewish.
He's scared. No, he is Jewish. The guy's Jewish, but he's scared that the other guy's going to rat him out. He says, what do you mean you don't know what I'm talking about? You were just singing Shabbos songs. You were singing Ko'ech Soif. You were singing, right? The guy, he's terrified. So he keeps denying. He says, you don't have to be afraid. He says, I'm also Jewish. He didn't believe him. He says, look, I'm speaking to you in Yiddish. Right? Kipi amidaber alechem, like Yosef HaSadik says to his brothers. Listen to my voice, I'm speaking in Lashon Kodesh, Yosef says. But the guy says he was still afraid because at the time you had Jewish defectors, people that sold out to communism, that wanted to try and put down their own brothers and sisters. So Yiddish wasn't a proof. So he doesn't believe him. He says, I promise you I'm Jewish. He goes, I even have my tefillin with me. It's on Shabbat. He says, what are you talking about? He rolls up his pants leg underneath his thing. He's got on his leg strapped is the tefillin. This Breslov guy on the spot starts crying. He says, tefillin? He says, I've been in this camp for 15 years. I haven't put on tefillin. I haven't seen tefillin. I managed to get a little short time to leave the camp today, and I used the time to come out and try and feel again like I was at a Shabbat table, like I was connected with my family, with my religion, with my Judaism. I don't have a meal, I don't have anything, but I have my Shabbat songs. The man felt terrible. He says, listen, I see you really want, anytime you want to come put them on, he says, you're more than welcome. I'm in this camp, this in this barracks. Faddal. Anyway, guy finishes his mission, goes back to sleep. goes back to his bunkhouse, goes to sleep. First thing in the morning, it's not even yet, what's it called? Dawn, alot. There's someone tapping him on the shoulder. He picks the blanket off of his head, right? He looks up, who's there? Rav Chaim looks at the sky. It's Nachman from the forest. He says, I snuck here as quickly as I could. Any minute now, it's going to be the time for tefillin. He goes, please, can I put on the tefillin? He can't believe the guy got in the next day, Sunday morning, right? He says, okay, so you got it. He gets out of bed. The other guy gets into his bed, under the covers. He puts the tefillin on underneath the covers, says Shema, says Amidah, lying down under the covers, tears in his eyes. He takes the covers off. He gives him back the tefillin. The guy puts it back on his on his leg, underneath his thing, and he leaves. This guy goes his way. The other guy goes to work. Now it's still very early, and the man, this rabbi of Chaim with the tefillin, he walks past on his way to the officer's quarters to get his job for the day. He walks past the guard, and he sees the guard of the front gate is sitting and eating breakfast, eating his bread, whatever that he's got there. And he realizes to himself, Shema Yisrael, they haven't served breakfast yet. If the guard's already eating, whose food is that? Nachman's. That's how he got in the camp. He bribed the officer to let him come in by giving him the one slice of bread that he got that day. Unbelievable. Shtabach Shemo. He goes about his day, he eats breakfast, this, that, goes back to sleep. The next morning, tapping him on the shoulder, looks up, who is it? Nachman. Again, the scene repeats itself. Again, he walks out. Again, he sees the guard. Rav Chaim never saw Nachman again. But what he does know about this man that he met in the forest was that he found out on Shabbat that he had tefillin. And then Sunday and Monday, Nachman went without food in order to be able to put tefillin on. The end of the story, I don't know. But look at what it means to a Jewish person. L'hitkarev to Hashem. Adam ki yakriv mikem korban lamunai. A lot of us, we put tefillin on, we're ticking a box. I got to put tefillin on today. You know? I got to put them on. I got to pray. I got to do this. I got to go to shul. I got to give tzedakah. How much maaser? Does this count? I got to eat matzah. I got to shake lulav. I got to go think. Oh, am I patur? Okay, anyways, patur. Okay, I don't have to do it. We're so invested. And the biggest shame in the world is, I always say this to myself, how many Jewish people put in so much to do Judaism, and they're going to get to Shamayim, and Hashem's going to be like, on all the things that they did, it's just going to be a big pile of stuff on the floor, and they built nothing. Rabotai, what's the difference between a Jew that does a lot of different mitzvot and someone that built something beautiful, that built a Mishkan for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that built a Bet HaMikdash, that built a Jewish home? What's the difference? This is the key, my friends. The key is in understanding where everything fits. To buy this stuff, you order it on Amazon. But the difference between a person who buys stuff and a person who builds something is a person who understands where each thing goes, what the place of each thing is in his life. So when I'm coming to pray, where does that sit in the life of a human being? What is the process of prayer supposed to achieve? If all it is getting you stuff, then it's just perpetuating another day of another lost and misguided life. But if the process of prayer, when I come into Bet Knesset, is to humble myself before God, is to pray to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and to understand that without His kindness, I can't live. That's a very different prayer. To thank Hashem for yesterday, to pray for today, and to hope for tomorrow. That's what a person's supposed to be doing when they come to pray. When they give tzedakah, it's not that I owe this money from Maaser, let me give it. I have to get rid of it. It's on my books. Here you go. But to think to themselves, Borei Olam created this world with kindness. I, as one of His children, am trying to emulate just like my dad does. I'm a rabbi in a synagogue. I'm a rabbi in the community. And so many times in my life, I think to myself, what would my father have done? How would my father have responded? I try and act in the way that my father was a very great man, as how he would have acted. But Borei Olam is all of our fathers. To think to yourself when you see a poor person, how would my father act? And we know the answer because we say it in Tefillah. Poteach et yadecha u'mazbi'a lechol chai ratzon. Think when you're giving $1 to someone, mazbi'a lechol chai ratzon. God, I'm doing your work. This is me fulfilling your wish in the world. And to think to yourself for 1 second when you're giving that act of tzedakah, that when that guy, that poor man prayed, Hashem said, absolutely, no problem. I got you today. I'm sending Rafi Hasbani. Think that that's what your dollar is. That's Borei Olam sending this person. You're suddenly attached to a system. Your tzedakah resides somewhere. The same thing with the chinuch of our children. When we raise our children, not only are we raising kids, but we're building a team. You know, the Patriots just went out and they spent a stupid amount of money. Why? Because Bill Belichick in his life never had a season as bad as this one, Aziz. Okay, he lost Tom Brady. Everyone thought Belichick is going to build back better Ya'ani, Biden style, right? And look at what happened. Hazit, the guy he lost won everything, and this guy, Bill Belichick, left holding the bag. They spent more money in one day in their player acquisitions than the guy spent, I don't know in how long, okay? Could you imagine for a second spending all that money getting all those players and then not knowing that this defensive back goes in that position, just telling everybody, you know, guys, okay, line up wherever you want. Who wants to be quarterback today? You know, who wants to block that? You have this really fast guy, small, sitting in front of the, 300-pound, he'll get eaten alive. Every person on that roster you spent all that money for, they have a specific mission to fill to be able to build a championship team. Rabotai, we were signed on God's team. He paid a lot of money, invested a lot of money in each and every one of us, in our wisdom, in our kindness, in our mesirut nefesh, all the things that he put into building this unbelievable team to go out into this world and to have a winning season. Are we turning the tide in the world to make it a kinder place? To make it a place that is more godlike? That's what God... Or are we going to be the Giants of 2 years ago? 2-14. Couple of wins here and there, but we're just losing on every front. Each of us has a role to play to be able to do that. And the mitzvot, they allow us to be able to put up good numbers, to change the lives of our families, of our communities, and the world around us. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen.